Let's check out another awesome old set of Nunchaku. These are classified as Setsu. That's basically just 3 sticks instead of 2. So your middle piece is a bit unique. If you look at it here, it's got holes and carvings on both ends, where typically, with Nunchaku with a set of 2, each stick only has that on one end. The main thing with these is just the question of why. Like, was it worth the trouble to do that extra carving and tying when you could just have the 2 sticks about the same equivalent length, and then you swing and smash, etc., etc.? Does this configuration make it less likely to bounce back and hit your hand? Is that it? Well, as you can imagine, we are going to test that theory out. First, this is how small this set here is. There's my wallet next to it. And as you might already guess, there was no hard and fast rules about what size this thing should be, what size each of the sticks should be. You're probably thinking that at least one rule here would be that the sticks are always of the same length, and that's true, they always are, except when they're not. But here they obviously are. This is a crazy little contraption. You know, somebody thought this was worth the trouble of making, right? It'd be a lot easier to just carve a single stick. This actually has 12 different holes handmade in it, if you think about it, plus the additional carving and stringing. But they went to all that trouble to create kind of the classic Setsu cone, I would say, which is 3 sticks of equal length. Unlike this set here, which we will check out in a future video. So the term Setsu cone, from what I can tell in the documentation, applies to any 3-stick set of chucks. Doesn't matter if it's symmetrical or asymmetrical. Back to today's set, here it is compared to the sap that I just happened to have in my pocket when I was making this video. If you discount the lanyard then and just focus on the weapon, you'll notice that each stick is about the size of the sap. So each stick is the size of a definitely small impact weapon. At least on the set we're looking at today, the one I got to hold, each stick is not much bigger than like an old school Yawara like here. Of course, I can't help but now put this old vintage police cover, police manual cover, you know, capo sticks, that kind of thing. And the thing with all of these weapons I'm showing right now is, you know, extra short stick weapons are for poking and prodding. You strike and press with the ends. This one's interesting because it's basically a short stick weapon that's meant for swinging, so a little unusual in that way. Obviously, if we think of 3-stick weapons meant for swinging, we immediately think of the 3-section staff. Here's a still from an old kung fu movie. I love old kung fu movies. And a low-res image or not, how do you not include Bruce Lee training with a set or training his son with one in hand when you come across that in your video research? Speaking of the 3-section staff, if you look for videos on the term Setsu cone, that's pretty much all you're going to get. So it seems the Japanese name for the larger, more famous weapon was also just then applied to the much smaller version. By the way, notice that one of the videos shown here says quote-unquote short version. Even then, you'll notice it's much bigger than the one we're looking at today. It's not, you know, standard nunchaku size. It's more of a smaller 3-section staff. And that's a good video, by the way. I'm going to show some different online retailers that make versions of this weapon while I talk about the fact that we don't know what the direct association between the Chinese 3-section staff and this weapon is. It's not like we know somebody said, well, what if we shrink one of these down? We do know that's happened, but we don't know if that's how this weapon came into existence. It could be more of a pure Nunchaku offshoot. The Nunchaku itself possibly originating independently in Okinawa, birthplace of karate, even though, of course, those weren't the only rice-threshing weapons known to man or the East. How great do these look? I might have to buy myself a set after this video. These right here are not cheap, but might be needed for scientific purposes. At the end of the day, what we end up with is this small personal carry item. Now that I've given back my antique loaner, this fellow karate Kobudo practitioner and YouTuber has actually been to Okinawa, unlike me, and he asked people about these, or asked at least one master about them over there, so I will be happy to steal his intel as long as I credit his video. And he said something that didn't surprise me in the least, which is that these would have been folded up completely and stuffed into the sleeve. Because this weapon wouldn't be carried around by somebody dressed like this, right? You don't use this to go to the battlefield. The Setsu cone. You carry it around places like this, regular life. And when you have sleeves like this, you can hide weapons in them. I've been told that Sai would be held in the reverse position and hidden in the sleeve. As I start playing with this thing here, you might have noticed that last video was titled Setsu Chaku, right? Like Nunchaku, so it can be Setsu Kon or Setsu Chaku. Depends on who you ask, which is the more correct. So yeah, handy little personal defense flail. Now, is this thing gonna take somebody's head off? No, it's more of a stinger. But it's fast and unpredictable, and a smack on the hand, wrist, temple, nose, knee, anything like that, shin, is not going to feel good at all. Following the flick up with a power shot is a kind of a combo of my own devising, I'll go ahead and say. That might be a pretty practical street technique with an item like this. Locking and then flailing is, I think, pretty darn practical as well. The dimensions are really good for that. To be realistic, could somebody, if they're gutsy enough, barrel right through this thing as you're swinging it and just turn this into a grappling match? For sure. May have much more reach than a Yawara or a Kubutan or something like that, but that's really the kind of tool this is. And that's the thing about one-handed flailing. It gives you maximum reach, maximum power with a set of nunchaku. I'm going to classify it as a set of nunchaku this small, that is. Any nunchaku standard size or bigger are going to hit harder when you use both hands. Speaking of using both hands, reminder, nunchaku are great, not just usable, but great for grappling. I have hands-on experience with that. And I think these would be as well, which is what the teachings say, that they work just fine for the pain compliance type holds and the chokes. I personally feel the 2-stick standard variety would be better because it's more of a pure vice, but I'm not married to that opinion. It's going to hurt either way, and I haven't experimented with a partner grappling with a pair like this or a set like this. So if you're going to carry something on the street, you might need to take someone out with a surprise shot in self-defense, of course. So this weapon does suit itself to that if you've got it kind of loaded. So that sucker punch I did there a second ago was from a grip like this. Also something of my own invention, and you've seen this in prior videos, maybe, on my channel, with slung shots. I was trying to come up with a way to hold and instantly deploy them. So if you'll notice, the trick here is that half of my hand, so to speak, is holding on to the grip stick, the one I'm going to hold on to, while the other half, my thumb, index, and middle finger, are holding on to the parts that are going to lash out at the enemy. As you saw, there are other videos on this subject, not many at all, and there's some written stuff out there too, although not very much of that. This is a pretty rare Kobudo weapon here, or Kobudo weapon. But one thing I don't think anyone has previously worried about is what I said at the start of the video. Does this configuration reduce rebound? Is that part of the reason for this design? Well, there's one way to find out. Part of what I was curious about was, well, and if you do get hit on the hand, are you only getting hit with a third of the wood instead of a half, if you think about it, right? Versus a standard pair. Surprisingly, I would say there's not a dime's worth of difference between this and a 2-stick variety.
Good.
And there was my son, the cameraman, chiming in. But no, I would conclude that this design has nothing to do with trying to reduce the possibility of bounce back. Well, a fascinating little curiosity from Kobudo circles. Not something you see often, not in movies, not in dojos, and it's not the most devastating item you could ever carry, far from it. But in the right hands, I think this could get the job done. The Setsu Chaku, or if you prefer, small Setsu Kon. Cool little item and a great old example that we got to see here today. Thanks.